Hi, I'm Arsen and the head buyer here at the Boulder Bookstore. Thanks for tuning in to our YouTube channel and our videos that we're making. So, today I want to talk to you about some older books. Two of them are older, one is a new book of old writing. These are all what I would call hidden classics, forgotten gems, books that are not widely known or widely read right now, but maybe were at one point in time, or certainly deserve to be read much more now. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a book of short stories called Elbow Room, James Allen McPherson. This is a book of short stories. I first came across McPherson in the Best American Short Stories of the Century, which was edited by John Updike. Came out around 2000, and McPherson's short story Gold Coast was in there. I'd never heard of him. He's an African American, and I was blown away by the story. So when I was looking through a list of former Pulitzer Prize winners, I was kind of surprised to see James Allen McPherson's Elbow Room on that list. This won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1978. Most of these stories were written between 72 and 1975 and appeared in different magazines. And they're really dealing with African Americans at the time. A lot of them are just a generation removed from the migration from the South to the North. There's a few stories where there's interactions between African Americans and white Americans. A lot of them are just taking place in the community, but there's all sorts of different characters in these stories. One story that's particularly memorable was about a woman who has a scar in her face, and you get the story of the scar. There's stories about kind of these small bit hustlers that try to rob a bar, and when the bartender takes out a gun on them, they're like, oh, we're sorry, we didn't know you were protected by the rackets. Like somehow the mob is behind them. And he's like, can a guy just be a strong black man and not be protected by the rackets? Now get out of here, you punks. And so there's just so many great stories, so many great characters in here. And the fact that the book is still in print, so it's not totally forgotten, but most people don't know who James Allen McPherson is. And if you said Elbow Room, if you had said Elbow Room to me 3 weeks ago, I would not have realized this was a Pulitzer Prize winning book. Great book. Zora Neale Hurston, Hitting a Straight Lick with a Crooked Stick. This is also a book of short stories. Now most people know Hurston for Their Eyes Were Watching God. It's her classic book. But Hurston herself was quite forgotten for a long time. We don't quite remember that now because she was rediscovered around 1970. But for about 30 years there, she was lost. And Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple, was key to her rediscovery. So this is a group of short stories that she wrote. Most of them were published in newspapers. And again, kind of like McPherson, a lot of these stories are dealing with first generation of the migration from the South to the North. One story that I really liked in here, let me get the correct title for you, was The Country and the Woman. Was about a couple in New York City, and the man wants to run around. He's in the big city now, and the wife comes and gets him with an axe. She walks down the street with an axe and through New York City, and the idea is like, well, he didn't think she would do this in the city. He used to, when he ran around back in the country in the South, she would come for him in all these crazy ways. Not so crazy, but all these kind of very aggressive ways and haul him back home. He did not think that was going to happen in New York City, but it does. And so these are really entertaining stories. Hurston has a great eye for detail, for the way people dress, the way they speak, and all these. It just brings to life kind of this world of the 20s, early 30s, this African American world. So I would highly recommend this. This was just published earlier this year. So these stories, they've been out there, but again, they haven't really been collected all in one place. And then finally, I want to talk about Tim O'Brien's Going After Cacciato, which I recently read. This one won the National Book Award in the 70s. And of course, O'Brien is famous for The Things They Carried. And I think I've always avoided this book, even though I love The Things They Carried, because I felt like it's all going to be about the war, and I've already got his take on the war with The Things They Carried. Well, I feel like I was wrong, and the quote on the back of the book I think sums up this book perfectly. To call Going After Cacciato a novel about war is like calling Moby Dick a novel about whales. So this story is about this soldier, Cacciato, in the Vietnam War, and it's not really about him, but it's about the search for him. He picks up and leaves one day, and he tells his platoon mate that he is walking to Paris, that he has maps, he has the rations he needs. He's just up and gone. He's left the war. And so what the book is the attempt by about an 8-man platoon to go and bring him back. And so they start in Vietnam, then they cross over into Laos, and before you know it, you're in Burma, you're in India, you're in Greece. You make the trip all the way to Paris with this platoon. And you're not quite sure what is reality and what is fantasy, and did they ever even try to find him, or is this all fantasy, or did the fantasy start at a certain point? But it's really wonderfully done. He mixes in the soldiers' backgrounds as he tells the tale, and they're moving through this strange territory. American soldiers were marching through Greece looking for somebody. But it's just so well done, and I felt like through this book I got a real feeling of what it was like to be a soldier, which is impossible, but what goes through your head when these people were in Vietnam? You know, the flights of fancy they have. How did they survive? How did they survive the endless rainstorms, the endless not knowing where your enemy is or what you're going to be asked to do next? And a lot of it they lived in their head, and they had to make things up, you know, according to O'Brien. And it's just a wonderfully done book, and I loved it. And I think if you liked the things they carried, I would certainly recommend this one. But even if you just like kind of fantastical fiction, almost surreal fiction to some extent, I would also recommend this. Thanks a lot. Happy reading. And if you got any forgotten classics you want to share with us, I'd love to hear what they are.